Hello and welcome to the AccelerateHer podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Pirrie, and as CEO of AccelerateHer, I have got the best job in the world. Throughout this podcast, we're going to hear from some of the incredible female founders that we work with. We'll hear their highs, their lows, and we'll revel in their achievements. We'll cover topics like raising investment, getting a product to market, growing a team, and we'll hear from the people in the ecosystem who have supported them. We're going to hear from amazing founders like Kate Cameron, Danae Shell, and the people who've worked with them like Evelyn McDonald. If this is your first time engaging with AccelerateHer, well, that's a great place to start. But look out for us on social media. You'll find us on Instagram and LinkedIn to see what other events we're running across Scotland. Come along and join us, be part of a vibrant network and part of the family. Now, sit back, relax, and happy listening. And today I am lucky enough to have two guests on the podcast. I am joined by fellow Aberdonian and founder and CEO of Elasmogen, biochemist Caroline Barelle. Hi, Caroline.
Hi there. Lovely to be here.
And sitting beside her is Vicki Hazley, Associate Director of Portfolio Management at the Scottish National Investment Bank. Welcome, Vicki.
Elizabeth, happy to be here.
Great to have you here. Ladies, I'm going to take you right back in time. I'm going to take you back to your school days. Can you remember even when you were, and I'm saying that as a fellow woman of a certain age, can you remember what you wanted to be when you were a wee girl at school, what you wanted to be when you grew up, Caroline?
Yeah, no, I can actually. So it was kind of split in two. Immediately, all I wanted to be was an air hostess because my dad worked for British Airways in load control. So I just wanted to work with my dad. So that was my first ambition when I was wee. And then beyond that, I think I kind of grew up and I was really fascinated by the world around us. And I know this sounds terribly, but myself, kind of the way I could see things and hear things and move your fingers. And, I used to inundate my mother with lots and lots of questions, trying to understand kind of the function that is the person. But then my grandfather, my dad's dad, became ill. So he got Parkinson's from quite an early age, actually, in his 30s, which is quite unusual. And so as a child, I only really knew him as this gentleman who sat in the corner of the living room, shaking and slurring his words and not really being able to communicate very well. So we spent a lot of time with him as a family. We took him on holiday. We were, up and down from our house every weekend and in his garden and doing things with him and such like. And as a child, I just couldn't understand why someone couldn't just take him to the doctor, give him some medicine, and he'd be well again.
Yeah.
Right? So I think from that very early stage, I was always kind of more fascinated with the kind of the drug or the medication or the medicine, if you like, that side of things, rather than the kind of clinical endpoint doctor type area. And that just kind of evolved and I took 3 sciences at school and then I kind of went to university one day. I told my parents I left school at 17. I'm just going to university now. I'm going to study science. So I did lots of different sciences. And then I kind of ended up doing biochemistry. And I'm not entirely sure why. I think I wasn't sure if biology was the right or chemistry was the right. And I thought, let's stick them together. And so I did biochemistry and it just kind of escalated from there. Yeah, so always a love of life sciences.
Yeah. I think when you're wee, don't you think there should be a Calpol for everything?
Yes.
Because Calpol fixes everything when you're wee, doesn't it? What about you, Vicki?
Well, that's interesting that Caroline had said that, and I suspected you would say you wanted to be a scientist from a young age. I actually didn't, although funnily enough, I also went to university to do biochemistry because I wasn't exactly sure what else to do. However, the first thing I can remember wanting to be at primary school was a journalist or a newsreader. I had this thing I was going to sit and read the news. So I don't know what that means. I've always liked communication. I quite like talking sometimes. Ended up going to do biochemistry, but then just because I thought science is useful and one will get a job if one studies. And I mean, it wasn't all that long ago, but you just assume that you'll get a science degree and you'll get some job as a scientist. And that's it. Simple as that. But it's not really as simple as that, especially in Scotland. Maybe if you're going to go down to the south of England, it may be an industry, but there's not really that much. But now, I think now young people realise that you can do lots of things after a STEM degree. You don't have to be a scientist, or you can be an entrepreneur,
So true.
or you can go into finance, and it's a good grounding for lots of things. But that really wasn't drummed into people so much back then. So I'm not a scientist or a newsreader after all of that. People ask me now, though, what do you do? And I sort of tell people where I work. Well, I work at the Scottish National Investment Bank. It's not as easy as saying I'm a teacher or I'm a doctor. Yes.
You're kind of like the Chandler.
Good job.
Your friend, good friend, yeah.
I'm still not sure what it is. Hopefully it's helpful. Carol can comment on that, but it's
incredibly helpful.
How did you get from studying science to doing this then?
So, I mean, obviously now I'm working in investment with young, exciting, growing companies like Elasmogen that are highly impactful. And, been in this sort of space for over a decade now, working with innovation-driven enterprises as you have, we all have. It's amazing how many people in this space are from a STEM background. So even in the investment community, so many. So you just need to kind of find those people, I suppose. And it's just obvious that one should move from science or engineering into financing, because someone needs to finance the science. And if you're not in a university and suddenly you're in an enterprise, that becomes extremely difficult.
Yeah.
To progress anything, because everything costs. So
yeah. When you and I first met, you were at Highlands and Islands Enterprise in the innovation team. And that, to me, makes a little bit more sense, because science and innovation definitely go hand in hand together. But yeah, you're right, that investment piece as well. It comes in. And you've been experienced in what the clients that you're working with are doing, albeit not to the level that they are, but that must be hugely helpful.
Yes, and I suppose when you're in one business, Caroline, I know you live and breathe it. That is your life. Whereas I always wanted to. I did work in a startup a long time ago, and it was great. But I wanted to look at lots of different business plans. So I went to Scottish Enterprise and spent 2 years doing R&D grant appraisal. Great. Then went to Highlands and Islands Enterprise, because I'm a Highlander ultimately. But that was enjoyable. And so you get bread. So I don't have the depth, but it's the bread. So it's those viewpoints are probably complementary, I would have thought.
And so, Caroline, when you were at university and studying biochemistry, was it always in mind that you would start a company?
Oh, absolutely not. Not even an inkling, not even a thought. And just kind of picking up on what you said, it was just something that wasn't integrated into our education at the time, the kind of commercial side of science. It was the academic, it was deep academia. And I guess I always thought I would carry on in academia, because that was the natural progression for me. So I continued and did a PhD, and then I continued into a postdoc. Postdocs are the most incredible people. I mean, they do a lot of different things. So I did a lot of teaching, I did a lot of tutoring. I looked after people in the lab as well as running my own projects and such like. So it was a great education in science. You were an independent scientist, essentially. You really cut your teeth on what it was all about, and how to, deal with variables and studies and ask the right questions and so on and so forth. And then I kind of progressed as a postdoc, and you can only really be a postdoc for so long, then you've really got to get up that next rung. And I had a couple of children during that time. So, then I chose to go part-time. And then it just was really challenging, because the metrics were, publish. So anyway, an opportunity came along from a biotech company. And it was a biotech company that was working on therapeutic antibodies. I knew nothing about immunology, I knew nothing about antibodies, and I knew nothing about commercial science. So I applied, and I got the job. And that just kind of relit my fire, right? I just kind of thought, and I think it's this whole application of science that comes in, and that's the kind of thread that weaves right the way through my passion, is coming back to the idea that I love science, but I need it to be done for a purpose, and I need to see an end point to it, and it was always kind of the clinical association with the science that we were doing. And so from there, it was kind of a hop, skip and a jump into big pharma through acquisition. And then when that came to an end, not through our choice, but, that's life, changes of strategies and big corporations happen. Then there was a team in Aberdeen whose jobs were redundant. There was me that was redundant, and a technology that was kind of there for the picking. And I thought, well, let's start a biotech company. If not now, when? Why not?
As you do.
As you do. Not a clue about it. But that hasn't stopped me before. And so I set sail and just gave it a go.
Brilliant. I'm just thinking, I come across quite a lot of women whose story involves at some point along the line a I looked at the job application and I thought I knew nothing about it, but I applied anyway and I got the job.
Yeah.
And I think we talk about men doing that, and say, but women wait till they're fully, they tick all the boxes. But I love hearing the stories because there are women who are willing to just put themselves out there and do that and say, well, yeah, it's science. So
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, I was probably in a good place in my life as well to take that kind of risk, because I appreciate that it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Because you do have other commitments and such like. But my children were a bit older, I just chucked them out onto the street. They're fine. They've grown into relatively normal people. I quite like them still. And, I just gave it a go. But in a supportive community, this is not a solo effort. None of these kind of activities are solo efforts. Yeah.
So I'm struck by obviously the challenges you face by taking time out to have your children, going part-time, to then coming back to trying to launch something like that. That must have been tough.
Incredibly tough. I mean, yeah, I would be honest with anybody who's considering this. It takes over your life, there's a lot going on. And if it wasn't enough, what I was doing at the same time was I was using the redundancy money from the pharma company that happened to be Pfizer to do an MBA at the same time, part-time. So I was doing an MBA part-time. I was actually a Royal Society of Edinburgh Enterprise Fellow, which was fantastic. So it supported me during that time. And then I also had to kind of get a job. So I worked in the development trust for the university as well. And so I was kind of all out, and it took us a year to kind of get some cash together. Very continued support from Scottish Enterprise during that process, and also the BBSRC. So we managed to get non-dilutive money, and we were under the umbrella of the university. And then I managed to bring the team together after that year. They were kind of dotted around in different labs and trying to keep occupied and trying to keep busy and working hard as they've always done. And then we pulled everybody together, and then we just started down this journey together.
Brilliant. So I do want to hear more about Elasmogen, what it does, and also what Scottish National Investment Bank has been doing, investing in them and working alongside them in that. But before we do that, I want to look a little bit more outward. We have our Agony Aunt slot, where I've gone out to the founders that we work with and asked them what questions would they like us to ask the experienced entrepreneurs that we're getting on the podcast. And this one has actually come from a student that I met. I'm entrepreneur in residence at Heriot-Watt at the moment, trying to get more women into entrepreneurship from there. But she was talking about the fact that she's working on a research project at the moment that she thinks has got the potential to turn into a university, to spin out from the university, but she doesn't really know what that means. She doesn't know what could she be doing now to make the spin out process easier, because she hears nightmare stories, not specific to Heriot-Watt, but just in general universities around the country. What can she be doing now?
Firstly, brilliant. I love the idea that she's thinking about this already.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And congratulations to you for being an entrepreneur in residence. Brilliant. Bringing that kind of mindset into universities, I think, is a really important part.
Yeah.
And it's really critical for building a pipeline of kind of innovations and commercializing innovations. So I think the first thing to do is, within each university, and every university differs, bless them, but there will be a department which supports the kind of commercialization of ideas or research or services or products or whatever it is that they're developing. So if it's research and innovation, if it's a tech transfer or such like, kind of get involved with them, talk to them, to let them understand what you're thinking about. But also in a university setting, there are support systems in place for you to to use some time to test the market yourself, to test the viability of the idea or the innovation of the service. And I'm a big advocate of iCure, which is an Innovate UK initiative. So you can actually get support to have, I think it's 3 months period, to go out there and just focus on it and just try and see. And within that, you get support. So you'll get, a business partner or a business or a commercial champion or something like that will come along and help you, who's kind of been there, seen it, done it. And you'll also get some of the university team to support you as well. So I think that's a great opportunity. But if you can't get that, because obviously it's competitive, is to to go out there and find somebody who's been there, seen it, done it, who can help you, who can support you, who can advise you, who can challenge you on your assumptions about this as well. Actually, that's important, because I've seen many ideas come out of universities, and I'm privileged in many ways, but one is that I've been able to sit on the panel of many of these kind of IQ processes. And sometimes they're there, but they're just not quite ready. Or they're there and it's more a licensing opportunity than a spin out, and they're there, but they're going after the wrong market.
Yeah.
They need to rethink what they're targeting. So I think support is absolutely critical, but yeah, I mean, that would be my advice, but keep at it. I'm brilliant in the first place to think about going out there and doing something.
Yeah.
It should be applauded.
Vicky, have you got anything to add to that? I'm sure you've come across a few spin-outs.
Oh, many, yeah. I mean, I'd echo what Caroline said, to take every piece of help you can get. I think, especially if maybe no matter what degree you've done, to be fair, you go through uni and you're measured on grades and it's all about yourself and how much you know. Then when you get into the working world, no matter what you're doing, but especially if you're starting your own business, there are no prizes for showing that I can do all this by myself. You need to take help. Take every bit of advice you can get. And if you're sort of technology led, however much you think you've tested the market, do it more. Start with the market, start with the customer, which is difficult if you're sitting on an idea and you think this clearly will be valuable and I can commercialize this. Monetizing that is difficult. There's a really good saying. It's research is turning money into knowledge, innovation is turning knowledge into money. So it's a slight flip then when you come out of uni and go into the commercial world.
Brilliant. So if you're listening and you've got any advice for our student and would-be entrepreneur, then do let us know. Email podcast@accelerateher.co.uk. And if you've got a question for any future guests on the podcast, do email podcast@accelerateher.co.uk. So, Caroline, that was great advice there. And of course, you're a spin-out yourself. Tell me about that whole process and what it is exactly that Elasmogen does. Because we've said the name, we've spoken about immunotherapy and things, but we haven't really gone into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yes, we spun out of the University of Aberdeen. So as I said, we were kind of under the umbrella for a period, which was fantastic, with grant funding, which was designed really for technologies that are close to translation. And what I mean by that are close to being investable to then take forward into the clinic. And yes, we are about antibodies, but it's antibody-like molecules. So in Scots, it would be wee or Pirrie antibodies, so little ones, which are naturally occurring, actually. And it's actually a technology that we worked in that first biotech that I made reference to, that I transitioned into industry for the first time. And then I had the pleasure of taking that technology into big pharma and kind of developing it further. And then when, the big pharma companies decided that they were going to kind of reduce the early stage R&D and up the sales of existing molecules, and with concerns over patent cliffs and such like, and obviously the economics of a large pharma company are very complicated, and our side became redundant, I had the opportunity to extract this technology. Now, that I can say easily, it wasn't so easy at the time. I obviously had to negotiate with a big pharma company and make sure that I cleaned that out quite quickly. But we managed to get hold of these domains, which are, as I said, small antibodies. And what we've done is we've created what we call libraries of these domains. Now, libraries are beautiful places with hundreds and hundreds of different books. So just think about that, hundreds and hundreds, but not hundreds, but billions of different little antibodies inside this library, which is actually just inside a little test tube. And what we do is we take targets, disease targets, so cancer targets or autoimmune targets, and then we select, quite literally, in this test tube, and any of these little antibodies, we call them solomers, that bind to that target. We can pull them out. We can then start building a drug with them, right? So, I mean, I'm simplifying that terribly. I'm not the one.
Thank you.
I'm not the one who does the clever science. I'm the one who employs the people who do the clever science. Okay, so just to make that very, very clear, I'm the conductor. I have no ability to play any instrument at all. Okay, and so we are focusing on autoimmune disease. I mean, that's a massive issue for a huge number of the population. And the way that we're doing that is not just targeting one molecule in a disease path, because autoimmune disease is incredibly complex. And if you have a complex disease, you need multiple factors to be effective or happening in that one drug. So what we've done is we've taken our solomers and we target a protagonist of inflammation. And then what we do is we link it to a small molecule, which also has an effect against this autoimmune disease, but a different effect, but a complementary effect.
Okay.
And so we're kind of targeting the medicine to the point of inflammation. So in our case, we're kind of focusing on autoimmune diseases that cause joint inflammation, for example, that kind of thing. So that's one aspect of the company, and that's the absolute focus internally. So we're building a pipeline, but of course we have this drug engine that we can produce other molecules, but we're taking our first product, hopefully with this next investment, to knock on the door of the clinic. That's our ambition, and to get that first product into the clinic and to start helping patients. I mean, that's what we're all about. Yeah, that's what I've been all about all my life. Just to be a small part of that would be just my life's ambition. But then what we also have is we're also working in oncology, so cancer as well, with the same kind of format, the same idea. And what we're doing there is we are taking, again, these solomers, but this time targeting tumor cells, and then linking something to them. So we've got two different kind of paths. In collaboration, we've got a chemotoxin, which is like chemotherapy, but creating targeted chemotherapy. And on the other side of that, so that's in collaboration, the other side of it, which we're working on internally, is to put a radioactive, so a radioisotope onto the solomers, so targeted radiotherapy.
Okay.
So chemotherapy has been the stalwart of treatment since the 50s, but it's really quite aggressive, and I'm sure we all know somebody who's had chemotherapy. And radiotherapy equally is quite tough going. So what we're trying to do is just to fine tune those types of treatments using our targeting molecules.
Yeah.
So that's where, well, as I say, I'm the conductor. I get excited. I can see the end game. I know where we want to go with which cancers. I know where I want to go with which autoimmune diseases, and it's my responsibility to kind of have that strategy, but also to get the investment in order to execute on that strategy. But the team are just formidable. They're creative, they're industrious, they're committed, they're passionate, and I couldn't ask for more.
Oh, that's lovely. So you mentioned investment there.
Oh.
So how long does this process take from when you first started to you're going to be knocking on clinics' doors now? Because that must require
Well, it requires
patience
and a crystal ball and a lot of money. I mean, it's an incredibly long process. There's no question about that. And it's obviously heavily regulated as well, which is critical and really important. So what you have to think about as a biotech company is not only developing drugs, but developing differentiated drugs that stand out from the competition in order to get that kind of investment, to then test it and then to bring it forward. So we're talking about 12 to 15 years from the kind of initial idea all the way through. There are different stages of clinical trials. You go in and do safety, first of all, which is really important to make sure that there's nothing untoward in dosing. And then you go into patients who have the disease, and then you go into larger cohorts of patients. So it goes from 1 to 2 to 3. And then, of course, you have to go through the regulatory process for approval. Now, okay, this is probably outdated type of numbers, but it used to, back in the day, cost about $1 billion to get a drug from there to there. But that's if the drug works from the start all the way through. So you can imagine the attrition rate. You're probably kicking up kind of 70-80% attrition rate as you go through the different stages of that process. So in reality, it's probably 12 to 15 billion with all the drugs that you've tried that have failed. And that's a big pharma company, right? And we're a biotech company. So we have to kind of bet on the horses that we have. We have to have really good, solid, robust preclinical data, a phenomenal board and phenomenal investors who kind of come in and support that. But right the way through the whole process, you've got to just kind of test not only the science, but the commercial. You've got to make sure that commercial viability is still viable, because things change, the competition takes off. There's lots going on in the world, as you can imagine, with innovation and competition, and you have to still be relevant
Yeah.
So there are lots of challenges, but Elizabeth, I get bored very easily, and so this is the perfect job for me.
Keeps it interesting. So your investors must be very patient. I come across far too many investors, mostly male, who seem to be looking for the next Mark Zuckerberg and want to see that hockey stick sort of thing. But this is where the Scottish National Investment Bank has come in, Vicky. Patient investors is one of the things they say about themselves. What attracted or what drove the bank to invest in Elasmogen?
Yeah, so we invested £3.5 million in Elasmogen in 2022.
Tremendous.
And, as Caroline said, this is biotech. This is a long game. And, students listening of all the sectors that, you might want to start up a business in, this is the most expensive. And it's the longest journey. But it's arguably one of the most impactful. So we're an impact investor. We are sector agnostic, but we're mission driven. And all of our investments have to align closely with one of our 3 missions. That's innovation, clearly that's Elasmogen, net zero and place, which you understand as well. That's about the rural economy and equity of place. So, quite a big ask for a single organisation. So our investment portfolio is a little bit of a mixed bag. I tend to work exclusively with the health and life sciences portfolio, which is perfect for me. I feel very privileged. Elasmogen is one of 5 or 6 in the health and life sciences, but one of only 3 in therapeutics. It's a risky business, so we're trying to back the most impactful. And as Caroline said, Elasmogen has a platform technology with lots of potential applications. The difficult part then obviously becomes, focusing. And as Caroline said, things change, the market changes, and you have different stages of investors with you for different parts of the journey as well. So, at some point in time, there will be sector specialists, deeper pocketed in the early days. Before us, there would have been, there are investors that will take more risk than us, angel syndicates, universities, etc. So, there are many stages in the journey, and we're here for this part of it and enjoying it.
Sector agnostic but mission driven. I love that, and sounds very much like many of the women investors I come across, and certainly our sister company Invest in Women Angels. That's how you would describe our portfolio nicely. We invest at that earlier stage and obviously much smaller amounts, but I think women are particularly good at being mission driven in what they do. But that can sometimes be interpreted as you don't need as much money because you're doing it for the goodness of your heart.
You still got to wash its face ultimately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you need to be passionate about the cause. I mean, you can't solve a problem that you're not passionate about it, though, I think. I guess the need of the customer, the patient, has got to be the driving. Yeah.
And as you say, Caroline, it's hard. It's not an easy journey, so you have to be passionate about it, because sometimes that's all that's going to get you out of bed.
Yeah. No, without question. I mean, you just need to remind yourself every so often why you're doing it, and see that end point is so worth it. We all have family and friends who have gone through tough times with various diseases and such like, and us ourselves maybe at one point will be patients, hopefully not, but so you're kind of thinking not just about today, you're thinking about tomorrow all the time, and that's what's really important.
So aside from having the support of the Scottish National Investment Bank, how has the fundraising journey been?
So it's tough, I mean, I'm not going to, kind of make it sound any different to that. I'm going to be perfectly frank and perfectly honest with you. It is difficult, it's challenging, because as we've just said, it's risky. This is a risky business. We make nothing, we sell nothing, and we want millions and millions to do that. So, and it's a strange kind of sector in that you are building value, but it's almost like it's intangible, because it kind of, the further you get down that development path, the more valuable the company is. But it's only valuable if somebody wants to pay for it, or to acquire it, or to license the technology, and so on and so forth. So yes, and each time you go out there, the competition just gets stronger.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's tough for me as a biotech CEO, because I believe in what we're doing. Of course I do. And I want it to succeed. And I need those investors to come on board and believe it with me. But in the face of really tough innovation elsewhere, and some of the geographies right now in the world are really just coming out stealth with, hundreds of millions in seed funding and Series A funding. And, that's trying to compete on that kind of, it's not a level playing field is really difficult, so.
The money involved in the US is somewhat different.
Yes, is your thing. It really, really is. But
Have you considered going over there?
No.
I was going to say, absolutely not. We're staying in Scotland.
That's what I like to hear.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
It must be tempted though.
Well, the thing is that people have asked. They've sort of said, are you going to up the company and go? And, at the end of the day, Scotland has great talent, right? I mean, we keep saying we punch well above our weight and such like. But the universities are good. They're solid. The scientists coming out of these universities are good. And we have managed to recruit from elsewhere. So if I look particularly around this last investment where the bank invested, we have on our board 2 individuals who are from the Golden Triangle. And my CSO comes up from Oxford.
Wow.
It's just insane. So that's how strong the technology is, but also kind of the ecosystem. And the ecosystem itself in Scotland is formidable because we're small enough to know each other. And even though there's that little competition, we're collegiate.
Yeah.
So I'll always bend over backwards to help somebody else and somebody helps me and so on and so forth. So, so no is the answer. I'm not moving.
I could chat to you two for ages about this. It's just fascinating. I absolutely love what you're doing, and I always say I've got the best job in the world because I get to meet such amazing women that see a problem and try to do something about it. And you are so mission driven and so very impressive. But we can't talk all afternoon, so I'll draw it to a close with the quick fire round.
Cheapers.
Now I say quick fire. These haven't been that quick fire in the answers from my other guests, and I fully expect you to be the same. Vicky, I'm going to start with you. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever ignored?
Ignored?
Mm-hmm.
So the best piece of advice I've read or heard in recent times, and I tried to stick, I thought, oh, that's good. But I know me and I struggle with it because I have a bit of this sort of FOMO. I like to be involved in a lot of things. I, like to be in about everything. Is you can do anything but not everything. And I would like to be like that, but I don't think I do actually live by that on a regular basis. But I do try because it's, this you can do it. Oh, I don't think you can. I think you can do anything within reason. I mean, I'm not going to be an athlete, but I don't know, maybe if I had trained from a young age, maybe. But yeah, I have a lot of plate spinning sometimes, and I do try to remember that.
Yeah.
I think as women are particularly guilty.
Absolutely fine. I think we're all.
I'm ready about what I can get done in a day, or even in 5 minutes. I'll just do those 10 emails and Hoover at the same time.
Yeah.
And then look at this business plan. Hang on, 5 minutes. I was maybe a little bit, ambitious there.
So stop ignoring that advice, Vicky. What's that? That's how you can. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Caroline?
Well, I guess, a few things probably. But one of them was I remember once when I started presenting, and it was more pitching than kind of doing the good old science presentations and such like. And I had a member of my team there, and I won't say who it is. And so I was up there giving it all, and then I sat down and I said, was that okay? And this person said, Caroline, you fling your arms around an awful lot and you bounce around an awful lot, and you should maybe just stick behind the podium and just talk and be clear, and that's the end of it. And I went, oh, okay. And then I went, no, because that ain't me. and that just doesn't, I cannot fit a mold that's, that's kind of this presentable profession. And to be honest, I don't even know I'm doing it when I get going, because you just get carried away because you're passionate about what you're talking about. You're engaging with the audience. And the worst thing that can happen to me is if there's just a podium and one microphone. I need to be out. I need to be feeling the screen. I need to be out talking to the audience and such like. So I completely ignored that, and it stood me in good stead, because I've managed to engage people in this.
I have heard you.
You may think I'm really mad, but I've come up afterwards and said, we want to carry on the conversation.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's great. Who would you dream of having as a mentor for the day? Now, this can be anyone, dead or alive, famous or not. Who would you have?
So I was thinking about this. If it was business, it would have to be Sandberg. So she is, so Sheryl Sandberg, sorry, pardon me. So who stepped down not that long ago as CEO of Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just this kind of peace, this boldness, this courage, particularly likely in a male-dominated environment as well, actually, and that boardroom presence and that dealing with that corporate kind of world.
Yeah.
But if it's just generally life, Miriam Margoyles, I'd spend. I would have a whale of a time with her. Always in one day.
I'll give you them both, Caroline. I think what a day that would be. That would be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Vicky, follow that.
Oh, this is difficult. I'm also quite indecisive. I've never been very good at these, and favourite songs. I don't have favourites. I can't pick one of anything. I'd probably do well with Michelle Obama. But I think that's maybe back to because she seems to be able to do a phenomenal amount. Like, if you read her book, she's like, I just went to the gym at 4 a.m. I'll never be one of those people. I want to be. Yeah. I achieved all of this stuff before 9 a.m.
Yeah.
2 kids, husband who's the president,
Yeah. Okay, so when you're not trying to do everything, Vicky, what's your guilty pleasure to unwind with?
Obviously watching Netflix. Then, watching Cobra Kai. And I tell you, my other one is fantasy football, Premier League fantasy football.
Oh, really?
Yep. Oh, husband's fed up of hearing about it. I've got 2 boys, 10 and under, and, every Friday night it's like, quick, we need to swap him out. Should we get Rashford back in because he's left Man United now and he might get more games now with Aston Villa? This is the chat. So yeah, 100% fantasy football.
And what about you, Caroline?
Oh, me banging out the 80s beats in the car in the morning when I should be listening to Radio 2 or Radio Scotland or something intellectually challenging, me singing away, people looking at me thinking, okay, there's that mad lady again. And equally in the house, when I've got the vacuum cleaner out or when I dust, rare, but I've got the banging 80s music. So I dance around my house.
Good stuff for like cheesy stuff. Like
Nothing. I don't discriminate.
Vicky, this cheesy stuff is the good stuff.
But like the Bangles or
just everything. Yeah.
But picture my head now, Caroline, of you with your vacuum cleaner bit. I want to break free and
my leg warmers get put.
Fantastic. You need a way to unwind, don't you?
Oh,
music is
great.
For that.
Music's powerful.
Yeah. What is the best book or podcast or audiobook or TV program that you've been watching recently? This again doesn't have to be business. Caroline.
Well, I'm gonna give a shout out to my cousin because I listened to he was invited on a podcast and it just came out this week actually. And it was I think the tagline is kahunas, which is just a word I love anyway. But it was the Kahunas testicular charity in Scotland that invited them to come and speak. Now, he was diagnosed, it's a decade ago now, actually, with testicular cancer. And we kind of went a little bit through that journey with him because he was working in Aberdeen at the time. So he had his chemotherapy in Aberdeen, but then he had surgery here, actually, in Glasgow, because his family lives close to here. And, we obviously visited him and we spoke to him and we chewed the fat with him for a while. And then he kind of got better and that was it, and everybody kind of got on with their lives. But sitting there listening to him, personally just going through his story, which I've never really heard him do before, and the fact that he's stepped up and shared that openly, and it's so important for awareness and such like. And it just kind of, every so often, you just kind of need to reset your priorities in life. Something kind of goes, and I just thought, good on you, Malcolm, love you. And we're thinking of you still, after going through that, and he's, absolutely fine at the moment. But just that. So yeah, completely biased because it's a family member, but just got me. Yes, yeah.
Vicky, what about you?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, first of all, and say I don't read as much as I used to. I just don't find I've got the time, or maybe just I'm more selective with my time, so it has to be a pretty good book. So if I'm not into it in the first chapter, just I'm reading children's books and I'm doing my fantasy football league and I'm not really spending a lot of time reading. But I read 2 books recently. One was a fiction book called The Last Witch of Scotland. Very enjoyable.
Oh, that's on my list.
Because I'm from the Highlands, so and I've been to where you don't know if you've seen in Dornoch, there's a memorial stone for the last execution of the last witch.
Oh, wow.
but dark time, dark period in Scottish history. So that was enjoyable. But non-fiction, a colleague recommended a good book to me actually, and it's called Surrounded by Idiots. But it's interesting because it just talks about the 4 different work styles. So you're one of 4 colours, predominantly red, yellow, blue, or green, depending on if you're more extroverted or introverted, or you're more people-oriented or task-oriented. And it just, as you're reading it, you're thinking, oh, there's me, there I am. Oh, there's so I recognise. They'll recognise the different types, and it's just about how to work with people who have a different style than you. And
it's good. We did a workshop at Elasmogen. We had everybody get together for a day, and ladies came in, and it was exactly that. And it was really helpful to understand how to communicate better with each other because of the way that I loved it. Yeah, it was really effective actually. Yeah.
And you have to be careful how you use it, though, because you do get people that sort of say, well, I'm a red, so that's just how I and you can't do that actually. You're meant to be aware of
True.
What the impact that behaviour has on other people. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I've added some more stuff to my list. One word to describe your business journey or your career, Caroline.
So I'm going to say intoxicating.
Oh,
intoxicating.
Oh, that is
good. I like that one. I think that's quite good.
Oh, I like that. Full marks for coming up with just one word.
I've got lots of words, as you can imagine, but I'm just going to stick with that one. Yeah. Fun.
So, got to have some fun.
Yeah, that's a bit.
It can't all be fun.
Yeah,
it is all to enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
You've got to enjoy it. Yeah, that kind
of yeah. I think you feel like me, Vicky, very privileged to work with all these businesses and almost live vicariously through them. Yeah,
definitely.
Brilliant. Caroline, Vicky, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I could chat all afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I have no doubt you have inspired many people listening, and I look forward to seeing you both again soon. Thanks for listening to me chat to another amazing female founder. I hope you enjoyed that. Of course, this podcast wouldn't have been possible without the backing and support of some amazing organisations. The Scottish Government, who funded this through their Pathways Fund, Barclays Bank for letting us record this in their amazing Glasgow campus, to Podplistic for seamlessly recording this and cutting out all of my bloopers, and of course to the guests for giving their time to come along and chat to me. If you want to hear more about AccelerateHer, please do follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. Pop over to our website, accelerateher.co.uk, and sign up to our newsletter. I look forward to seeing you at an AccelerateHer event soon.